and his family says has surpassed expectation for survival. McCain is in his 6th term, but has been away from the Capitol since December. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey calls McCain an American hero, always putting country before self. In Washington, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
A constitutional attorney says he has a theory about the ongoing tension between President Trump and his Attorney General. Chad Groening has more.
In a rare instance, Jeff Sessions has fired back at his boss, Donald Trump, accusing the president of trying to improperly influence the Department of Justice for political gain. Trump has often been at odds with his attorney general and has again slammed Sessions for, he says, letting Democrats control the Justice Department. But Sessions insisted that he has been in control of the DOJ. Matt Barber is co-founder and chief counsel of Christian Civil Rights Watch.
There's the appearance that Jeff Sessions is doing nothing and not doing his job. The fact that President Trump has not fired him, and President Trump is very politically astute and does not do anything accidentally. I have a theory that Jeff Sessions may be working behind the scenes to gather all of the evidence against the deep state, and then they may be ready to drop the hammer, hopefully right before, in kind of an October surprise, before the November midterm election.
Barber says there is really no other explanation.
Otherwise, if Jeff Sessions is really doing nothing as it appears, I would hope that President Trump would replace him with somebody that will do his or her job.
The president has said that Sessions should have told him he planned to recuse himself on the Russia collusion issue before he accepted the job of Attorney General. I'm Chad Groening.
A prominent Democrat has been named the so-called Porker of the Month. And as Chris Woodward tells us, Republicans should not get too comfortable.
The Porker of the Month award comes every month from Citizens Against Government Waste, a nonpartisan nonprofit organization dedicated to eliminating waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement in government. Spokesman Curtis Kalin.
The August 2018 Porker of the Month is Senator Kamala Harris of California. She last month introduced a bill that would essentially put taxpayers on the hook for the rents of anybody who's making under $100,000. Essentially, it's all about incentives, and Senator Harris's bill basically perverts the incentive, where in the same manner as the student loan market, if there's no incentive for landlords to control their rents in a vibrant market, then they will just hike the rent, and because they know that taxpayers will be footing the bill. And that's one of the reasons she's been named Porker of the Month.
Harris joins a who's who of Democrats to be named Porker of the Month. Elizabeth Warren got the nod a few months ago, as did House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. Meanwhile, Citizens Against Government Waste has also named a number of Republicans.
The month prior to this one, we named Congressman Mike Conaway of Texas for the Farm Bill. It's an equal opportunity. And there's also been Republicans this year that wanted to bring back pork barrel earmarks, and so they've been called out as well.
I'm Chris Woodward.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We will never know how many thousands or millions of youngsters do not get their start in the workplace because they've been priced out of it. We're pricing out entry-level jobs. You know, there's no such thing as an entry-level job any longer. If you've got a job, it has to pay for a family of four. It's got to be a living wage. It's a tragedy that those people will not be getting those jobs. What a shame.
The president may never be found guilty of it, but he can be impeached for it. It's my opinion that the Judiciary Committee is not doing its job. If the Judiciary Committee doesn't move forward, then I think it's incumbent upon the 435 members, each of whom have the opportunity to bring articles of impeachment, to consider doing so.
Just when they were getting ready to take the picture, she looked up and said, I've never been this close to a black man before. And I looked down and said, I'm not black. And she said, what? And that's how they took the picture of her going.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Welcome to the program. It's Friday, and we are really excited about it. I have a super full weekend planned, and so we're going to have a fantastic show, and then we're going to head on into some rest and relaxation, which is going to be fantastic. So today on the program, we have Kassy Dillon. She's a contributor to the Daily Wire and founder of Lone Conservative. She's going to come on and talk about we should strive for a peaceful world. So we'll hear from her about that in first hour. And then second hour, we are going to be speaking with Demetrius, who is the Florida Coalition's Director for Americans for Prosperity. He's going to come on and talk to us about the latest with AFP. And I have to say, another really interesting news day. So listen, here's what we're going to do. I first have to get into this story. You know what? I'm going to get into the story afterwards. First, let's kind of draw all of these things together by getting into some audio of an angel mom. So if you're unaware, an angel mom is a woman whose child has been killed by an illegal immigrant. And what makes these people special is that they're not special. They have their family members killed by people who shouldn't be here, meaning it's a senseless death. Now, all murders are senseless deaths because someone has to be imprisoned and punished for doing the murder. Their life is forever irrevocably changed. And then you have the people who lose their family member, and the family member themselves, obviously, who are just devastated by a loss that didn't have to occur. So unlike an accident where you can say, there's something going on, and all these things came together and there was an accident. When it's a murder, it's where someone decided that someone else shouldn't live for whatever reason. And so when it happens and the person shouldn't have been here, it's even more egregious because you really think to yourself, this is one of those situations that had our government been doing what it is mandated to do, had our elected officials been doing what they promised when they were running for political office, had our border enforcement agents been permitted to do their constitutionally mandated jobs, they have certain things they're supposed to do, then none of this would have occurred, right? So this is what makes it. And then you have the media who basically acts as if your child was killed by an illegal immigrant, nothing happened. And that is infuriating. And so if you have any kind of any feeling at all, you have to really, your heart goes out to these people, these Americans who have had every part of our system fail them. And then the media says, we're going to ignore you. You don't matter. Your child's life doesn't matter. We're more concerned. As Elizabeth Warren said, I don't mean to be harsh, but we really need to focus on the real problem here, and it's illegal immigrants being separated from their kids. The ultimate separation is one in which you can't ever see your child again until, the other side of glory, when your child's been taken away from you prematurely, and also not just your child, but your grandchildren from that child have been taken away. All of the life experiences, all of the shared experiences, everything has been taken away from you by someone who, honestly, they could care less. Illegal immigrants, when you see their demeanor in court, they're like, they don't even see what the big deal is. They're coming from a country where killings and murders go unsolved all the time. It's just a whole different mindset. So you've got this angel mom, and she's on Fox, and she begins to share the reality of permanent separation and what that really is. It's not having a kid that's not yours taken away from you at the American southern border. It's what she shares in number 3.
It is a story that needs to be out there because it is a real thing. It is something that is happening daily to American families. And I do not want to see another family have to go through this. And unfortunately, now Molly's family is going through this.
The president has said and has tweeted that Molly's family has been that Molly has been permanently separated from her family. He was criticized for using that language. Your response?
But it's true. You know, we hear the left stating, you know, we can't separate these parents, the illegal aliens that come over here, those parents from their children. But yet we don't care about us American citizens that have been permanently separated from our loved ones, our children. I never get to reunite with Sarah in a day, an hour, 10 months, a year. Never. Until I die and go up to heaven will I be reunited with my daughter.
Did you hear that? And so when you can just contrast what she shared with what Elizabeth Warren has said, and this is a woman who she said over and over again she's not running for president, so yay. But she's out there. She's out there saying these things about the parents. And this lady, you know, God bless her, but she's not the only one. And I was going to say I could see if it was just one case, if it was just one murder out of 320 million people, but that's even too many. That's too many. I'd never say, oh, if it's just one murder in the inner city, that's okay. Or if it's just one murder in the suburbs, or if it's just one family that has to lose their child, then it's okay. It's never okay. Either you believe that all human life is valuable and worth something, or you don't. And we know where the Democrats stand. We know. We know where they are. They don't believe that babies are babies until the parent says, I want them. They don't believe that elderly people who've become a burden on their family members should get to keep on being a burden. Instead, they believe, well, you know, you don't really have that much life expectancy, so, you know, maybe we could get a panel together to adjudicate the truth. It's time for you to go. They're all about assisted suicide and all these things that really devalue the lives of human beings. And so when we hear this about this, you know, this angel mom, she's talking about her experience. We're not hearing much from the Tibbet family. It turns out they're pretty liberal, and so they have to toe this line. They have extra expectations put on them because as liberals, they're supposed to take one for the team. The death of their daughter is supposed to be subjugated to the rights of illegal aliens at the southern border. And if they come out too strongly against it, they'll be told they're not good liberals. They'll be told they're xenophobes, they're bigots. And if they say nothing, people will think that, you know, what is there to think? They're not saying anything. So they've put out a very kind of controlled statement. And they have every right to say whatever they want to say or don't want to say. In this instance, they've lost a family member. And we don't need to be satisfied. They have to do what they feel is best. But moving forward, what kind of attitude are we willing to tolerate from the Democrats? And this is what this is about. I wish people would just, for 1 second, if you just detach yourself from your ideological moorings for a second and say, how much of this complete ignorance are we willing to put up with? The answer should be zero, but we're going to put up with some ignorance because people are going to people, but we should be trying to get as close to zero as possible, not just allowing it to run free across the country. And that's what's happening here. Look at, so this next bit of audio, if you're not already infuriated and saddened by what you heard from that lady, and she's separated from her daughter, and you know the Tibbetts family is going through that, and so are thousands of other families across the country whose children have been killed by illegal aliens. You got this Democratic, he's a DNC member, Democratic National Committee member, and he's sitting in this forum where they're putting on this big speaking engagement, and he's got this huge screen up where he can put up slides and whatnot. And he starts talking about how Immigrations and Customs Enforcement arrested one of his union members at a meat processing facility that processes bacon. So he had me at bacon. But then you start listening to what he's saying about what happened. And you have to be kind of like, wait, dude, what? What's your problem now? Because here on the show, just a little background, here on the show, we have demonstrated over and over again that, especially in these meat processing facilities where you can come in entry level and work your way up and be earning a really nice wage, these are good American jobs. They provide a service to Americans. They're needed. We want our meat processed in the United States, not in some foreign country. And when meat processing facilities are allowed to hire illegals, they do. But when ICE cracks down and detains illegal immigrants who are working in this country, the people who replace them are almost always 80% of those people are black. Now, why is this important? Because that means if the illegals hadn't been there, those black Americans would have had jobs from the get-go. So they're hiring the illegal immigrants because they can get away with it. But when they're finally forced to adhere to the law, they hire Americans. How does that help? Well, it lowers crime in the inner city. It lowers crime when it's crime or work. That's how this thing falls out. And I know, well, if you're not working, it doesn't mean you're a criminal. Of course it doesn't. But in areas where there's a lot of unemployment, there tends to be higher crime. So the most important thing we can do is try to get our employers in this country to hire American citizens. People keep saying there are more jobs than there are people. Not really. There are plenty of people out there who need a job. But if you're hiring illegal immigrants, then of course we're going to have this false dichotomy. So here is this DNC member who is infuriated that ICE busted up 168 illegal immigrants working at this bacon processing facility. It's number 4.
I'd like to use this opportunity to tell you what happened in my own union just a few weeks ago. My union represents workers in a meat packing plant in Salem, Ohio. One day, our members went to work processing bacon as they do every day, and ICE showed up with semi-automatic weapons, with guns pointed in people's faces, with a helicopter hovering overhead, and 146 people were detained. 80 of them are still in detention. Some of them were detained for the crime of not bringing their papers to work that day. They were sent away, and it took quite some time to get them back, and it was because they didn't bring their documentation to work. That is not what I want to see America.
So he's upset because now some of the people, they didn't bring their documentation to work. So they were apparently legal, but they didn't have their documentation. And so they had to go home and get it. But others were detained because they were in the country illegally and working. So that's more than one crime, by the way. Working in the country illegally is a crime. Being in the country illegally is a crime. Hello? Yeah. Having false documents, forged documents, stealing someone's identity, crime. And this Democrat is actually more concerned about, I don't know, the illegal immigrants. That's what he cares about. He doesn't care anything about the other people who have been displaced, who happen to be his constituents because he's a Democrat and blacks vote 90% for the Democrats. Pretty unbelievable. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Kassy Dillon. She is from the Daily Wire and founder of The Lone Conservative. Stay there.
Capital One commercial will forever be etched in the ear of the listener. What's in your wallet is a phrase that won't easily be forgotten. But this is not a Capital One plug. I want you to think about the people that are in your circle of influence. Who's in your circle is my new catchphrase, simply because we don't think enough about the people or spirits that we allow into our personal space. Negativity is contagious and fatal. Misery loves company, and it's fatal to your hopes and dreams. I think we all know someone who, no matter what good has happened, always has something negative to say. Ugh, that really bothers me. That bad attitude and that pessimistic spirit will only cause you to do the same. There's no room for doubt, especially if you're believing God to bring that vision to fruition. Now, this is not a license for you to be mean. It is, however, a license for you to assess who's in your circle and make the necessary adjustments. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. I grew up with a kid who was a good student, came from a great family, and was an outstanding athlete. But he had a problem. He had a stubborn, rebellious streak in him, and the older he got, the more obstinate, even defiant he became. His behavior became so destructive he was kicked out of school and hardly anybody wanted to hang around him. Today he is experiencing the outcome of his bad choices. He is in prison serving a life sentence. Listen to 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verses 11 and 12 and 15 through 17. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord his God. He did not humble himself before Jeremiah the prophet, who spoke for the Lord. Now verse 15. And the Lord, the God of their fathers, sent word to them again and again by his messengers, because he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. For they continually mocked the messengers of God, despised his words, and scoffed at his prophets, until the wrath of the Lord arose against his people, until there was no remedy. Therefore he brought up against them the king of the Chaldeans, who slew their young men with the sword in the house of the sanctuary, and had no compassion on the young man or virgin or old man or infirmed. He gave them into his hand. Hardly anything else needs to be said. God does not play with our rebellion. Here's what I want you to remember today. If you're rebelling against God in any way, I want to plead with you. Turn away from your pride and self-centeredness. Please listen and submit to God. Soften your heart. You don't want to end up where you're surely headed.
Legacy Moment is a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Global Ministries.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. It's great to be with you. Happy Friday. UrbanFamilyTalk.com and American Family Radio. You can find that at AFR.net. We are glad to have your ears, or if you're watching on the screen, your eyeballs. Thank you so much for being here today. We have frequently had guests from the Daily Wire on the program, and they're always superb. And so Kassy is going to be no different. I'm certain it's Kassy Dillon, contributor to the Daily Wire and founder of Lone Conservative. Kassy, thanks for joining in on this Friday.
Thanks so much for having me, and happy Friday.
I know. Every Friday I'm so grateful. I love my job. I love getting to do what I do, but I also like having the weekend where I can, kind of just do family stuff and kind of unplug from politics. So Fridays are always
Absolutely.
fun. Yeah. So let's talk about this. You have a piece over at thedailywire.com. We should strive for a peaceful world. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, the premise of this piece is there is this couple who sold everything they own and quit their jobs, and they traveled the world for about a year. And they started in South Africa and went all the way up the African continent and went to Asia and the Middle East and all these different areas. And while they were in a little-known country called Tajikistan, they were mauled by ISIS insurgents and killed and stabbed to death. And what's so sad about this is their outlook in life they had. On Jay Austin's blog, when it's the guy who was there, he said that he believes the world is a peaceful place. And he said, it's a make-believe, evil is a make-believe concept, is what he wrote. And it's so sad that he went the way he did. And so I wrote a piece about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit on the show, I think, if I'm thinking of the same. This is the couple where they're both young. They quit their jobs so they could bike around the world because they said evil is something that we kind of make it up. Evil's a made-up concept. Really, most people are good. And they had these experiences where they were biking in the rain and someone put their bikes in the trunk and took them and gave them hot soup and let them spend the night and shower. And another time, one of their bikes was damaged and someone helped. And so they had all of these good Samaritans helping them get across the globe. And they'd been sick and they'd been really in need of, assistance from strangers, and strangers always stepped up. But then they got into the Middle East.
Exactly. Well, they're actually more towards Asia. It's a country northwest or northeast of Afghanistan, and they're really close to the Afghanistan border. Okay. So it's a country called Tajikistan, and it's not really known for terrorism. Yes, it borders Afghanistan. There's a threat, which is why they have this spillover of insurgents there. But honestly, the outlook they had was just kind of ignorant of how the world actually works. But it's still a sad tragedy, and it's really scary that it happened to them in the first place. And it wasn't just them either. It was other tourists from Europe that were stabbed to death alongside of them.
So I don't want to be too mean, but there's a part of me, because I'm a mom of teenagers, and there have been times when our daughters specifically have said, well, we're always supposed to help. And so when I would, as a mom, it's your job to kind of test out your kids' minds on what they would do in certain situations. And so I remember asking my daughter when she was getting ready to get her driver's license, she'd already done all of the prerequisites. She had a permit. And I said, what happens if you see a man by the road and he's, limping or something, and he's asking for help? And she's like, oh, I'd have to stop and help him. And I was like, are you in the car with us, or are you what's the circumstance where you feel like you could stop and help him? She said, oh, I could stop and help him if I was on my way back from work, or if I was on my way back from school. And so I said, no. And our younger daughter was like, wait, why wouldn't we help? We're Christians. We want to help, if someone's hurting. And I'm like, yeah, but it's a single man. So you have a cell phone. And so if it's a single man who's pretending to be hurt, who wants to, help, and you pull over as a single girl with a car, he can overpower you. And now he's got you and your vehicle. This is not a smart idea. Instead, you should call 911 and keep going, right? And they were really they argued with me a little bit, because they were like, well, what about, helping the Good Samaritan and this and that? And I had to we went in this conversation. It lasted about 20 minutes of me trying to get them to understand. And so this isn't something that's unique to this young couple. It's that they never had a parent tell them, if you're in the Middle East as white Americans, you're a target. If you're, if you know no way of you're protecting yourself, and you're biking across the nation, and you happen to come out of the more civilized portion into a wilder portion, and you encounter people who don't like Americans, you may die. Evil isn't just real. It's every day people are getting killed, not just in America, but most frequently in these types of countries where these two chose to go and bike. And so, I read the story, and I just was like, the things they said, that most people are good, they're kind. Look what happened here. They gave us soup. This cup, so a couple of examples of kindness, and everyone in the world, all 7 billion people, are just waiting for them to show up so they can be nice to them. It's extremely naive, and it's very dangerous, as we see, is what happened to them.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I think your point about somebody on the road is so telling. Especially, there's been cases of people putting baby strollers or baby car seats on the side of the road to get people to pull over and, see if there's actually a baby in there, and then they get their car stolen or they get abducted. So I absolutely agree that we need to be careful. And the premise of my piece, I wrote it because I am somebody who has traveled to very dangerous areas, because I'm really interested in the Middle East and different areas like that. So I actually went to Iraq and Kurdistan earlier this year, about a couple months ago. And when I was there, I was not naive. I knew that I was a target. I knew I was a Western white woman walking around, and that people were staring at me and taking pictures of me. But I also had a security team of around 4 to 6 people at all times. So I was not naive. I made sure I was safe, and it's just really sad that this couple didn't do that as well. I knew that there were good Kurds out there that I wanted to meet. That would be very nice to me. But I knew that there's, spillover from Iraq, that people don't like America, and I knew that there was maybe some spillover from Iran and Kurdistan. So I was extremely cautious, and I wish these guys would have been too, because it's very sad.
It is sad, but if anything can be taken from the story of this young couple, it's first of all that parents really need to be more aggressive in talking to their kids about so evil isn't something that we talk about because we don't like certain people, or because we want you to be fearful or afraid of certain people or certain situations. Evil is something that we discuss and we know is real, because the evidence of it is that people are killed, murdered, maimed, raped, kidnapped, abducted, tortured, mutilated. All kinds of horrible things happen every day. These things happen in America, but they happen even more frequently in these, kind of third world countries, where when you show up American, it's almost like you're advertising for someone there to attack you, kidnap you, etc., which you demonstrated that aptly by saying you had the 4, sometimes 6 security guards with you for one person. And it's really, I think it's dereliction of duty when people, not just parents, but teachers and coaches, don't just teach kids that we strive for the utmost moral and, having integrity and all of that here on this team or in this classroom, et cetera. But everyone in the world isn't like that. And criminals, the definition of a criminal is someone who's breaking the law. That means they don't have high morals. They don't have standards. Criminals aren't like in Hollywood where they all have this redeeming side to them that they eventually in their character arc come to know that they've done something wrong and they redeem themselves. Most criminals are just criminals. They're going to end up in prison, and they may end up in prison for doing something to you unless you're smart and aware and cognizant of that.
Absolutely. And this goes beyond just criminals. This goes on to terrorists. I was hearing stories of things that happened to some of the Peshmerga, which are the Kurdish forces, things that happened to their families because they were Kurdish and fighting against ISIS. I heard a story that I think about all the time that really scared me, where there was this guy who was fighting the Peshmerga, and he gets a phone call from his wife who was living in Kirkuk. And when he picked up the phone, he greeted his wife. He thought his wife was on the phone, but in fact, it was an ISIS insurgent calling him and beheaded his entire family on the phone. So evil exists, and it's out there, and it happens to Westerners a lot because obviously we're targets, but it happens to the Kurds who are fighting in conjunction with the American forces in Iraq. It's just a really sad thing, and people really shouldn't be naive when they're going over there. I mean, I would love to go back over there, but I'm not going to go back with a bicycle and one guy and think I'm going to be safe.
Yeah, I read the story, and I saw some people online, kind of kabuki dancing about it. Oh, they deserved what they got. They were so stupid. But really, they were naive to the point of being a danger to themselves. And so the story, it just screams out for, you print it off and you bring it to the dinner table at night and you say, look, this happened to this young couple. Let's talk about, some of the ideas that they had that probably aren't rooted in reality. It's a wake-up call. It's also, we saw it with Otto Warmbier when he took that tour out of China into North Korea. And he just underestimated the brutality of that dictatorship. And he assumed that he'd be able to get out okay. And in reality, if you're an American in North Korea, you can just count on never coming out alive. Like, that's not a country that you just go into because we're just going to take a quick 4-day tour into North Korea and see what it's like. You shouldn't need to see what it's like. It's a communist dictatorship that doesn't even have electricity for all of its countrymen. Everybody there has tapeworms and all kinds of, catastrophic illnesses that we eradicated like 100 years ago, and they don't have enough food. What is to go sightsee about that? And so we just see that, over and over again with there are these stories that crop up. It's not like this couple's the first ones to ever, kind of run up on the buzzsaw of reality.
Exactly. And it's important to know that not only do I do think people should see the world, but you need to realize where you're going, because if you're going to different places like Cuba and North Korea, you're bringing money with you and you're feeding into that economy that's propping up this dictator regime. You need to be careful of where you're going, which is why I was happy I picked Kurdistan, because, Kurds have been fighting with us for a while. When you go to North Korea, you're propping up the regime that doesn't deserve to be propped up. So I do think that people should see the world, but you need to be very careful about where you're going and where you're spending your money.
Kassy, the funny thing about that is I would have never thought we'd come to a day where I would say that about even going to Europe. But a couple years ago, our oldest daughter was on her senior trip to Europe, and they went to a number of different countries. It was one of those, 11 days, and you're in like 6 or 7 countries. And it's perfect for high schoolers. And while they were there, they seemed to be 6 to 8 hours ahead of 4 terror attacks that happened. The terror attack on the bridge, the London Bridge near Big Ben, they were on that bridge like the afternoon before that terror attack happened.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it is. It was spring break, so my husband and our younger 2 kids are on, our spring break, but it was really just me sitting up on Facebook communicating with the people who were in charge of the tour going, where are you guys actually, like, it says you're supposed to be here. Are you here? Because did you see there was a stabbing in the airport? It was linked to terrorism. You guys are out of that airport, right? They're like, yeah, we were there 4 hours ago. There were 4 terror attacks, and they missed them all by a few hours. So it's almost anywhere in the world that you go now that you have to kind of say, look, if you go to France, you're kind of taking your life into your own hands because they have so much terrorism. Like, it's not even a Western European country anymore the way it was when I was growing up in Germany. France was pretty safe. Germany was safe. It was just, you just traveled around on these little weekend tours, on tour buses, charter buses. It was just fantastic. Now it's really changed. And I think when people hear that, they're like, oh, she's bigoted or she's Islamophobic. I'm not afraid of Islam, and I'm not afraid of Muslims. I am wary of terrorism, and I think we should be more careful about as you've said, we should just be aware of where we're going.
Absolutely. And honestly, it even goes further than terrorism in some cases, too. Well, trafficking of women and children in Europe has gotten so bad. I just reported on an article where in London, they're trafficking in Vietnamese boys and girls to come work on marijuana farms. And there's thousands of them being trafficked right into London, which is just such a place you wouldn't think that would actually happen. And so I think that trafficking is getting really bad as well, and it's really scary. And another place that I've spent a lot of time is Israel. And yes, Israel has terrorism threats, but the government there is just so on top of it, way like light years ahead of Europe when it comes to combating terrorism and keeping people safe. So I think that the European countries do need to step it up. And it's not necessarily because people are afraid of Muslims or Islam. And the real problem is that you have these governments who don't know how to address the issue, and it needs to be addressed, and terrorism needs to be combated in all fronts.
I agree. And so as we close out the show here, or this segment, I just want to point people to thedailywire.com. It's Ben Shapiro's amazing. I mean, it's just like, it's a powerhouse over there. It's the new Blaze, Breitbart, like think of every IJR. It's the new current version of those, but it's even better. And so if you go over to the Daily Wire, you can type in Kassy Dillon in the search engine and get her fantastic article. I'm also going to put it in the live streams for people to click through and read it. I encourage you to read it because it's a great jumping off point for conversations with your kids or your nieces and nephews or your grandkids. We're not trying to scare kids, but we want them to be aware. I'll give you the last word on that. We have about 30 seconds left.
Exactly. Everyone should see the world, but you should be cautious about where you go and make sure that you are protected. So if you want to go to a crazy war zone like I did, make sure you have security taking care of you and make sure you're not wandering off by yourself or interacting with sketchy people, because you do stand out as a Westerner. I had people taking pictures of me my entire time walking through the streets. Just be careful, but don't let terrorism deter you from seeing the world.
I agree. And I got to say, if you're savvy like Kassy, yeah, then definitely go to these, tougher countries. But if you're not savvy like Kassy, just take a couple of guards with you and go to a country that's not quite as dangerous. There are grades and there are different levels of what you can do. I think it's awesome that you took that trip and that you went in and saw it for yourself. And it takes a lot of guts to do that.
You can always follow me on Twitter and live the experience through me, because I love interacting with different cultures in the Middle East. That's my favorite thing to do.
Absolutely. Oh, and so in case you're looking for that, Twitter, she's at Kassy Dillon, and that's Kassy with a K, Kassydillon, Dillon. Kassy Dillon on Twitter, and also Kassy Dillon on the Daily Wire, where she's a writer, contributor, and founder of Lone Conservative. Thanks so much, Kassy, for joining in today.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Talk to you again soon. Have a happy weekend. We are just, I know that in this audience, we have a lot of parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and people who interact with kids. And I think you could have knocked me over with a feather when I was talking to our daughters about this. If you pull over on the side of the road and a man needs help, would you help him if you were in the car alone? And the girls said yes. They don't believe that anymore, obviously, but I was so shocked that growing up with, Second Amendment mommy, they were fine with that. So don't underestimate the touchy-feely, Care Bear world we live in here in America and how much it's seeped into your kids. All right, when we get back, we're going to take your calls. Be right back.
Hi, I'm Kevin Sorbo. You may know me from my TV series Hercules or Andromeda, or one of my hit films such as Let There Be Light, God's Not Dead, or What If. I wanted to invite you to offer your full support for the Ministry of Preborn and its leader, Dan Steiner. The team at Preborn is very focused and very successful at saving preborn babies from abortion.
The Ministry of Preborn saves babies' lives through ultrasound. By letting a mother hear her baby's heartbeat and see her baby in the womb, she'll choose life 80% of the time. For $140, you can help save 5 babies' lives. All gifts are tax deductible, and 100% of your gift goes to saving babies. To donate, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby.
Every baby deserves to be born.
I had a conversation with my daughter about making mistakes and not getting this Christian walk right. I had to explain to her that none of us are perfect, but we are all striving for perfection. Then I was listening to a song by 10th Avenue North called You Are More. The song really explained what I shared with her and reminded me that the enemy would like nothing more than to use the mistakes and things you've gotten wrong against you. But because of Christ, you are more than your mistakes. You are more and bigger than your fears. You are so much more than the choices you've made. And God's love for you never wanes. It never decreases. It never ceases to exist. Today, no matter what you've done or how bad you think it is, repent and rest in the forgiveness and love of the Father. Extend to yourself the same passion and grace that the Father extends. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
I'm Chad Pergram with the Speaker's Lobby. History may not repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. Democrats capitalized on a host of GOP scandals in 2005 and 2006. A federal grand jury indicted top White House aide Scooter Libby. House Majority Leader Tom DeLay faced an indictment and was forced to step aside from his leadership post. Former Republican Congressman Duke Cunningham and Bob Ney went to jail. And then, over a 24-hour period in late September 2006, it was discovered that Republican Florida Representative Mark Foley sent inappropriate text messages to underage House pages. Voters awarded Democrats control of both the House and Senate that fall. It's unclear that if this November we'll look back at August 21st in the same way we viewed those last days of September 2006. In a 3-hour span Tuesday, a federal jury convicted Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen pleaded guilty, and Republican California Representative Duncan Hunter was indicted. Under the 2006 model, that tornado would be enough to toast Republicans and propel Democrats to the majority in both bodies. But this is 2018, and the specter of scandal doesn't quite stick like it did 12 years ago. With the Speaker's Lobby, Chad Pergram, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We all have a true color. Like when the government does the census report, every 10 years they ask a bunch of questions. One of the questions is race. The first box to check in that category is for white. Now the second box, my race. They have multiple choices. Black, comma, African American, comma, Negro, comma, running back, comma, rapper. But they had a little box to write something in. And that write-in box is what made me decide to find my true color. Now, how do you do that? Go to a hardware store. Go in the paint section. Spend some time. Grab those little paint chips. It took me about 15 minutes, but I found my true color. If you say I'm black, I'm not mad. That's not racist. I'm not offended. I'm just telling you all here in Provo, Utah, I know my true color. I'm a shade of brown called chocolate indulgence. Hello. 50 shades of chocolate indulgence, man. All you people have been told you're white, you're not white, you're a shade of paint called papaya smoothie. I looked it up. Store. I know, it's silly, but it's funny. And that's why you gotta find a reason to laugh. So find your true color and then report it to the government. Let them know what color you really are. You might be papaya smoothie, you might be rosy taupe. I don't know. But report it. And when they see that we have so many different colors, we're not just black and white like they label us, maybe they'll stop asking us what color we are. They'll find some much more important things in the world to solve, okay? Fine.
And so not only was that funny, I actually was laughing out loud at that last night when I found that on an online website. I have to say, his idea about putting it on the documents to the government is great because rather than tracking what our ethnic background is, wouldn't it be great if they asked us questions like, you know, quizzed us on the Constitution, quizzed us on American sovereignty, quizzed us on whether or not we believe that our nation is the greatest nation on earth, that we have, you know, our first allegiance to America. You know, when's the last time you, and I know people will definitely hammer me for this, but when's the last time you attended your religious observance? You know, our Constitution was created for a moral and religious people. And the further away from that we get, the more we see people not understanding what it is that, hey, these are our rights. They don't, as we see more people get away from church and get away from understanding our God-given rights, we see more people who they just can't stomach the truth of the Constitution. And people are more easily triggered. So I have a good friend who sometimes shoots stories over to me. And just before the show started, she sent me this story. And it's a local one, but this is perfect for our national audience. And I'll tell you why. Because people literally are doing this all over the country. They're losing their minds over the simplest of things. And I'm with you. You know, if you don't like someone saying something to you, but it's not about what you like. It's about the truth. Is it not? Can we agree on that? So here's the story. You've got Oakville High School and their principal. So this could be any high school in America. This is a middle-class school district. It's not affluent, but it's definitely not poverty-stricken. A lot of different income brackets live in this school district. It's a nice kind of leafy suburban area of town, and they're very gung-ho about their sports. Public high school. Nice schools. The district has a dress code. And so you've got dozens of parents who are furious after they say a speech on the first day of school about dress code took a sexist turn. Now you're probably thinking, oh man, I wonder what this principal said. It must have been pretty horrible. Well, the principal of Oakville High School happens to be a woman. Her name is Janet Kellerman. And she told the students on their first day, girls aren't supposed to show their boobs, bellies, or their butts. She doesn't want the boys distracted, and boys shouldn't wear what she called wife-beater shirts. Now, could she have put that more eloquently? Sure she could have. Certainly she could have. Did she need to with a group of high schoolers in public high school? If she's been their principal for more than one school year, I'm sure she's heard way worse than that. Now, it's not that I condone this type of communication from the principal, but I think what we do is we look at our kids and we think all the kids are like our kids, or all the kids are better than our kids. The reality is there's a wide range of what is a kid today in America. And if you want to understand that, just go people watch. Watch how many girls walk by you and you can see the side of their chest. How many of them you can see enough cleavage to, there's nothing left for you to imagine. You've seen it, basically everything. How many girls walk by and you can see the bottom of their rear end, as their shorts have been cut up so high that there's nothing left for you to imagine. How many people are out there wearing clothes that are sheer, because Beyonce and Rihanna have completely revamped what is normal attire. I'm not sure if I shared here on this show. I was at Whole Foods, or Whole Paycheck as it's known. I was headed in, and I got in my minivan, and another lady was getting out of her car. We actually parked, nose to nose. You know how you park nose to nose in the grocery store parking lot. So I get out on my side, she's on the other side because we're parked nose to nose. I lock my little minivan and come around the back and start walking towards the door. So I have to walk kind of catty corner, but near her to get to the door. I glance over and she has on a bodysuit. Now, she was an attractive woman, but she had on a bodysuit, no pants, just the bodysuit, and then a sheer duster. It's kind of like a jacket that goes all the way to the floor. It has no buttons on the front because it's meant to be left open. And then she had on some high heel, knee-high boots. This is at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday. Other people were pushing strollers into the Whole Foods. I mean, I looked, and then I looked again, like, what am I looking at right now? This has gone too far. So I know there's a lot of freedom, and I've had plenty of women that I know who are conservatives who'll say, I don't like this constant talk about how women need to make their skirts longer and women need to dress more modestly, because we should be able to dress however we want, and men should not feel, empowered to do things because we're dressed a certain way. That's not what this is about. This isn't about justifying poor behavior on the part of men. It's about respecting yourself and covering your body up like you have some sense, because the parking lot of the Whole Foods is not a Beyonce music video. So those are adults I'm talking about. I've also seen teenagers walking with their parents with no clothes on. No clothes on. I've seen people walking to church with the teenagers have on no clothes. When I say no clothes, I mean clothes that are pajamas would be clothes that would be considered pajamas is what I would say these kids have on, and they're at church. So you're sitting there with your husband, I'm sitting there with my husband, and then there's this family right there with their 2 daughters, and the daughters have on no clothes. I mean, you know, it ain't right. It ain't right. So these parents got into such an uproar, they caused the principal to apologize. And one mom said the apology wasn't even enough because, you know, now somebody's got to lose their job because somebody was offended. They were told that boys shouldn't wear undershirts to school and girls shouldn't wear, you know, no clothes. That's what I'll call it for this good Christian radio that we're doing here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. So let's go to the phones. We have Wanda from Ohio. Wanda, thanks for calling in to American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hi, Stacy. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thanks for calling.
Because you're really hard to hear, honey. Anyway, I have this story about Blue Bunny ice cream. I was listening to the radio, and they were telling the story about Blue Bunny has this ice cream that's just chocolate and vanilla in one carton. And the family, a multiracial family, had dinner, and they were having this Blue Bunny ice cream at dessert. And one of the kids looked at the carton, and I think I want to know if you know anything about this, because I'm curious to know the whole story. Looked at the carton and was offended because it reminded them of the Civil War. And could Blue Bunny, they wrote them a letter and asked them to change the name of their ice cream. And you were just saying earlier about how people are freaking out about, you know, things that are just so stupid. They're losing their minds over it.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of them. This is like, oh my God, are you serious?
Oh, wait. I see what you're talking about. I see the story. Mixed race family asked Bluebell ice cream to change flavor name. The name was called The Great Divide, homemade vanilla and Dutch chocolate. And it's the ice cream is half chocolate, half vanilla. Okay. So again, Wanda, thank you for bringing this to our attention. I agree with you, and I think this is just another example of that. This is an example of people saying, you know, if you see the ice cream carton and you find it offensive, why not just not buy that one? This is America, where you can get literally 500 different types of ice cream in your town by visiting maybe 5 different stores. I'm always shocked by how much bigger the ice cream section is every time I go because I'm, you know, on low, no sugar. So I'm not eating ice cream right now. I only can have the Halo Top, and that's only every blue moon. And so it's really, sometimes I'll be on that aisle getting some frozen fruit, and I'll stumble into the ice cream section, and wow, they've expanded this. They have to move their frozen pizza to the next aisle, and this is all ice cream from one end to the other end. Why not just buy a different can? So it's Tracy Smidley that Wanda's talking about, her husband and their brood of 6 kids, sitting down for an ice cream party at their Louisiana home. And we always buy Bluebell. This time we chose the flavor, The Great Divide, which has chocolate on one half and vanilla on the other. And then after dishing it out, her older son, who's 10, called the Great Divide flavor the Civil War. He said the line down the middle of the carton reminded him of the Mason-Dixon line, and the name reminded him of a time in history when our nation appeared to be irrevocably divided. He looked at our table and saw a mixture of both black and white people, not divided on one or the other, but like in the ice cream, but gathered around the table together. She said her son was not complaining or calling the name racist. He just didn't think the name Great Divide was the best name for something as wonderfully unifying as Bluebell ice cream. So they said the better name for it would be Better Together. Wow. So, yeah. Just more people, you know, bringing up stuff that's, you know, and people in the thing are laughing. People in the YouTube chat room are laughing about the whole thing. It's just ridiculous. Okay, John from Tennessee. Hey, thanks for calling in to American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. You guys always have excellent topics. This situation with the about the divide with the ice cream and whatnot. See, the child himself is not taught true history, like from what's the one with I forget the name of the thing, but he teaches all history and they got an original document.
Oh.
I can't remember his name, but they need to be taught that because a lot of times they're not taught true history, and they have a very small sliver of history, and even the sliver that they have is corrupted. You know. Now, the other thing I needed to share with you, this is something I learned. Someone told me a long time ago. If you were driving like your daughter's, driving down the road, and you see an accident, you seen a person on the side of the road bleeding, and you stop to help them, okay, while you're helping them, 2 or 3 doctors would have gone by because they thought you was a doctor.
My thing is,
you see, they need to know that because, you know, people. In other words, it's okay. They're taking care of. I'll just pray and keep going. Might be a few doctors and nurses that have gone by because they see you out there and you're unqualified to help other than by prayer.
Well, you know? and I also saw a story, not to only have Debbie Downer stories. I saw a story of actually this was shared at the Family Research Council's Watchman on the Wall earlier this week, John, and it was a fascinating story. The guy who was telling the story was the man who was on the side of the road. He'd been in an accident and thrown from his vehicle. And one of the men who was driving by was a physician. And he said, the Lord told him, you need to pull over. And he was like, pull over where? Why do I feel like I need to pull over? And he felt the strongest urge that he had to pull over right away. As he begins to look around, he sees a group of people standing by the side of the road. And all of them were regular people who couldn't help. They said, you got here too late. He says, I'm a doctor. What's going on here? He says, you're too late. The guy is already dead. We looked at him. He's dead. He says, no, I'm supposed to come over here and pray for him. So he goes over, prays for the guy, feels his pulse. He's not dead. He calls 911, and then they, begin to administer help to him. And the guy telling the story is the one who was actually thrown from the vehicle and almost died. So my admonishment to my daughters is not that we should never help, but it's that they should be wise. But when you talk about people driving by because they think someone's already helping, this is one of those situations where we just have to use our common sense. If we know there's nothing we can do, then we dial 911 and you keep going, because you don't want 80 cars pulled over at an accident so that the emergency vehicles can't get there. But by the same token, you want to do something. You're not just going to drive by and go, well, I can't help. I'm single alone in the car and that looks like a man. So there has to be some wisdom to it. And the comment you made about people, not teaching their kids the history or the kids' history not being complete, I think with the family, with the Bluebell ice cream, the son was just making a joke and pointing out all the things he knew about, history and slavery and the Mason-Dixon line, probably because he was covering those things in school. And then the parents took it to the nth degree. Come on, parents, have some common sense. If your kid's principal says kids need to wear clothes to school and stop showing off their bodies and distracting the other students, don't go against that administrator. We have a hard enough time with these administrators sexualizing our kids. You finally get one who's doing the right thing and you lose your mind. We can do better. That's the first hour. When we get back, we're going to have more great information for you. Head on over to urbanfamilytalk.com. This is on AFR.net. We'll be back with more right after this.
Family Talk.
American Family Coffee is coffee with a cause. Not only is it a delicious way to start your day, but it can also wake you up to the idea of supporting the American Family Association through a product you'd normally buy anyway. Choose from morning blend, evening blend, and everything in between. Get your American Family Coffee and support the American Family Association at afastore.net.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Steve Pugh. Missouri launches a statewide investigation into church sex abuse. Jeff Manasso has more.
Missouri Attorney General and Republican U.S. Senate candidate Josh Hawley announcing an investigation into clergy sex abuse within the Roman Catholic Church, for which the Archdiocese of St. Louis has said that Hawley will be given unfettered access to any and all records. This comes as multiple survivors of clergy sex abuse protested outside Hawley's office Wednesday, encouraged by the findings of a grand jury investigation in Pennsylvania that revealed widespread sex abuse over the last 70 years. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
One of President Trump's earliest supporters, Jeff Sessions, is now the subject of conversation in the president's tweets. John Decker explains.
after the Attorney General disputed President Trump's assertion that Sessions had failed to take control of the Department of Justice, President Trump urged Sessions in a tweet to look into all of the corruption on the other side, referring to Democrats. Sessions, who's generally ignored the president's criticisms, fired back against him in a statement yesterday, vowing not to let the Department of Justice become improperly influenced by political considerations. The president has vented frustration at Sessions ever since the former Alabama senator recused himself in March of last year from the investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
A public policy analyst says President Trump was completely justified in revoking John Brennan's security clearance. More from Chad Groening.
The former CIA director has been making the rounds on mainstream media outlets, lambasting the president for his decision, and has threatened legal action to prevent other current and former government officials from having their clearances yanked. And more than 75 intelligence officials have denounced Trump, saying they have a right to express their views on national security issues without fear of punishment. Abraham Hamilton III is general counsel and public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
Security clearance is a privilege. It's not a right. It's interesting to me, the people that are saying that John Brennan's free speech rights are being impinged when he's talking about it all over the television, on CNN, on different networks, sharing, first of all, his opposition to President Trump, but secondarily, his opposition to his security clearances being revoked. So that clearly shows that that's not necessarily having his free speech impinged upon. I mean, this is a guy who voted for the Communist Party in his history.
Hamilton says there are members of the deep state who want to get out classified information that could be negative for President Trump, but need someone with security clearance to do it.
It clearly proves a risk to the president's administration and potentially to the security and safety of our servicemen and women around the world. So I think President Trump is doing the right thing in revoking Brennan's security clearance, and I hope he's the first of several others that will follow.
I'm Chad Groening.
And a well-known abortionist in Ohio is on the verge of being shut down by the state.
Martin Haskell owns Women's Med Center of Dayton, and this week, Judge Mary Weissman of the Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas ruled he has 30 days to shut down or appeal the revocation of the clinic's license. Margie Christie of Dayton Right to Life tells AFN he has terminated thousands of preborn babies over several decades.
Currently, in the last 2 years, he averages about 50 babies a week that he murders at his facility there in Kettering. Even talking about women's health, I mean, how many women have we damaged in that time as well, too? Just as many.
Haskell's problem is a lack of a required transfer agreement with a local hospital that will handle his botched abortions.
When we listened to the hearing, his attorney even said he has never had a written transfer agreement with any hospital. No hospital wants to deal with this guy, and yet he still continues to operate.
Haskell, years ago, was proud of his role in developing the partial birth abortion technique for late-term babies through the 9th month of pregnancy.
He kind of perfected, if that's a good word to use, the procedure, and he's not a very good gentleman.
Partial birth abortion is so gruesome, Congress passed bills to ban the procedure, but it only became legal after 3 visits to the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm Charlie Butt.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com, on Facebook and Twitter, and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
It's time to call your senators. We need to tell them to put an end to the liberals' filibuster, switch to a majority vote, and defund Planned Parenthood. Call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Senators respond to constituent calls. So call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We will never know how many thousands or millions of youngsters do not get their start in the workplace because they've been priced out of it. We're pricing out entry-level jobs. There's no such thing as an entry-level job any longer. If you've got a job, it has to pay for a family of 4. It's got to be a living wage. It's a tragedy that those people will not be getting those jobs. What a shame.
The president may never be found guilty of it, but he can be impeached for it. It's my opinion that the Judiciary Committee is not doing its job. If the Judiciary Committee doesn't move forward, then I think it's incumbent upon the 435 members, each of whom have the opportunity to bring articles of impeachment, to consider doing so.
Just when they were getting ready to take the picture, she looked up and said, "I've never been this close to a black man before." And I looked down and said, "I'm not black." And she said, "What?" And that's how they took the picture with her going,
And now, Stacey Washington.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. We had someone in the call queue to talk about the uniforms or the school dress code, but it looks like she may have dropped off. If you still want to chat, we'd love to hear from you. The call lines are open at 866-963-2037. But right now, we are going to, let me run down for you real quick. This hour on the show, happy Friday to you, we're going to be talking about Representative Al Green having this ridiculous statement that the president doesn't need to commit a crime to be impeached. You know why they're saying that? They're saying that because that's what makes them feel good. That's the way they can nullify the result of the last election. They can basically put their stompy foot down one last time and say, hey, you don't have the right to beat Hillary Clinton, so you won't be president. We may not be able to get Hillary in there, but we don't. You're not going to beat us. We aren't beaten by you. We'll still beat you. That's what the Democrats are up to. We're also going to talk about Stuart Varney slamming Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for her kind of ineptitude, where she goes and visits a coffee shop where she got her start in the work world, only to find out that it's this iconic coffee shop that was in lots of different television shows in Hollywood is actually closing down because they were forced to pay a $15 minimum wage, which meant they couldn't pay their rents, which were skyrocketing, and so they're going out of business for good. And then in the final segment, we're going to be speaking with Demetrius Minor. He's Director of Coalitions for AFP Florida and also a member of Project 21. But he's coming on today to talk about how stadium subsidies lead to corporate welfare. And this is important because, like, for St. Louis, we lost our NFL team, the Rams. They wanted to, Stan Kroenke was the owner of the Rams. He still is. He wanted to increase the value of the Rams by moving it to California, to Los Angeles, and the value of the team would immediately increase because the land there is so much more valuable. And so he did that. And he kind of said it was because we wouldn't give him a brand new stadium with the kind of terms that he wanted. And what's interesting about that is that NFL is so profitable. It's so profitable. So why wouldn't they just pay for their own toys? Why do we taxpayers, like, I'm not even a football fan. Why do I have to pay for, my tax dollars to go to subsidize the stadium? Well, it makes St. Louis a world-class town. Does it? Does it really make St. Louis a world-class town? I don't think so. I mean, sure, I think St. Louis is a world-class town anyway, even though we no longer have the Rams. It's like, not that big of a deal. So AFR.net is the website. Also or urbanfamilytalk.com. I was going to say AFP. That's not our website. And also, I want to encourage you to follow us at StaceyOnTheRight.com and on Twitter and Instagram. So right now, let's listen to, it's Representative Al Green, hardcore liberal Democrat, talking about the president not really needing to commit a crime to be impeached.
This is a very sad time in the history of our country. This is not something that I enjoy talking about, nor is it something that I would like to do. But I think it's becoming increasingly clear that the president will have two options. One, he can resign from office, or two, he can face impeachment. Impeachment is something that the framers of the Constitution provided for a time such as this and a president such as Trump. The president does not have to commit a crime to be impeached. In fact, the president is not likely to be indicted, which means he's not likely to be found guilty of a crime while he's sitting, which means that if this comes before the House, it won't come before the House as a president who has been found guilty, but rather as a president who is alleged to have committed certain offenses that are onerous to the Constitution and that harm society. And what this president is doing is harming society.
Now, first thing I want you to notice is how vague that was. Vague and completely obtuse. He's doing things to harm this society. What things? What things is President Trump doing that are harming American society? The tweets? You got to be kidding me. You know, we've got what? Less than 20% of Americans are actually on Twitter. So the rest of the Americans are like, what tweets? What are you talking about? I haven't seen any tweets. Are you talking about him saying things that you don't like? Well, that happened while Barack Obama was president too, and it wasn't a constitutional crisis. So what gives? He's so vague there. He basically has just told us that the Democrat strategy, if they take back the House, is to impeach the president for being Donald Trump, the same man they all loved and took money from when he was a private citizen. So, you know, if it stinks, it's because there's something wrong. And that totally stunk. And I thank them for, you know, coming up with that stuff and telling us the truth, because these are the things that we need to be focused on when we're thinking about what to do in November. Focus on what both sides, both parties have said they're going to do, what both parties have said are their primary objectives, and then make your choice based on that. It is true that we need 67 votes. It's 2/3 votes in the Senate to impeach the president. So, but this isn't about impeachment as in removal for the Democrats just yet. They don't think they're taking the Senate back. It's highly unlikely that they take the Senate back. It's that they want to impeach the president to hobble him and stop him from pushing forward with his agenda, because it's been so successful. You look at everything that's going on financially, economically, the country is booming. And the Democrats can't allow one of their core constituency groups to realize that economic freedom and having not just a job, but a job that's paying more and paying well and has possibility for promotion, that kind of movement economically in the black community means black people will start considering voting for the Republicans. If for no other reason than economically they're doing well. They don't want people realizing that they're shooting themselves in the foot by voting for the Democrats. Sorry, they just don't want that. So, okay. Now, there was also the fact that, just in case you're wondering, Representative Al Green, do you remember that name? It's kind of pinging around in your brain. You're like, he sounds like somebody. He was the one that thought Guam was going to tip over into the ocean because we had too much military equipment on the island or something like that. It's just lunacy. Honestly, just the craziest stuff you've ever heard. And then there it is. So there's a big, thing going on with Trump canceling Pompeo's visit to North Korea. And this was kind of something that we foresaw, because the president said all along that if North Korea complied with, their agreement to begin denuclearization efforts, that there would continue to be, open dialogue between the two countries. Well, the upcoming scheduled visit from Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to North Korea has been canceled at this time because they're not on the right track with denuclearization. They have also been made aware that the United States is taking on a much tougher trading stance with China. And so China's not helping along with the process of denuclearization in North Korea as they once were, despite the UN sanctions that are in place. So this situation it remains fraught with a lot of moving parts and things that are just kind of difficult to, navigate. And the president is doing the best that he can in the situation. And I've never been one to believe that this was going to be an easy process, or that the, dictator in Korea was going to suddenly begin to be very, very much, just all of a sudden he's going to start acting like a Westerner and honoring his commitments. I just never saw that as being something that was going to be easy. So we'll see. But I give the president credit for taking all of the opportunities that he could to make this happen. And I'm sure that they're doing everything they can behind the scenes to make it even better. But that is one of the stories. And then also, one of the other things that is a big, big story for the weekend is that some hurricane called Weakening Lane still on track to slam Hawaii with widespread floods and mudslides. So the president has declared a state of emergency in Hawaii, which makes disaster relief funds from federal agencies like FEMA available to the islands. And they have images that are just stunning, floodwaters coursing down the Waikuku River near Hilo, Hawaii. Rains of 10 to 20 inches struck the region. So it's amazing what's going on there. As of 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Lane's top sustained winds were down to 110 miles per hour. So it's a top-end Category 2 storm. Lane's center was located about 145 miles west-southwest of Kailua Kona. So it's right there in the heart of everything. We have to keep the people of Hawaii in our prayers that not only will we not see a loss of life, but that the actual property damage will be minimal, hoping that they're not going to have, lots of damage that they'll have to rebuild and all of that. The forecast is for colossal rainfall amounts that may produce locally devastating impacts. And of course, we're also talking about high winds, and just, it's hurricane. It's a hurricane. So I have to pray for them. The other thing that we have going on is that Chinese military has announced that they are going to join the Russians for nuclear war games. Now, this is not something that we've seen often. You've got the Pentagon closely watching Beijing and Moscow forces because they're going to do a exercise together, calling it Vostok 18. Russia and China are going to hold large-scale military exercise next month, including simulated nuclear weapons attacks. The People's Liberation Army will send more than 3,200 troops, 900 pieces of military equipment, and 30 aircraft to Russia for the exercise known as Vostok 18 or East 18, the Chinese Defense Ministry said. They've noted that the exercises will involve practicing maneuver defense, live firing of weapons, and counterattacks. We urge Russia to take steps to share information regarding its exercises and operations in Europe to clearly convey its intentions and minimize any potential misunderstanding. And that is according to Eric Pahan, who's the Pentagon spokesman, talking about Vostok 18. Additionally, joint Russian-Chinese exercises scheduled for September 11th through 15th will include military forces from Mongolia for the first time. Mongolia, which was aligned with the Soviet Union until 1990, in recent years has sought closer ties to the United States, despite being located directly between Russia and China. A Pentagon official said the Vostok war games will be closely watched by U.S. intelligence agencies. So the reason we're watching closely is because they expect that they're going to use simulated nuclear weapons. So we want to see exactly what they're going to be simulating. Luckily, we have satellites, so we can take a peek. But we're going to be looking to see what they're doing and seeing what their strategic messaging is, because just the fact that they're holding the war games together is a message to the United States. A Pentagon official, actually it's a senior fellow at the International Assessment and Strategy Center, Rick Fisher, issued a statement saying for nearly 20 years, Vostok has been the Russian proving exercise for developing their new escalate to de-escalate tactical nuclear doctrine involving the use of new, very small nuclear weapons fired mainly by artillery. Nuclear weapons fired by artillery. Interesting. All right. What we're going to do now is go to the break. And when we get back, we're going to talk about the coffee shop destroyed by the $15 an hour minimum wage. And we'll also take calls if you'd like to call in, 866-963-2037, urbanfamilytalk.com, afr.net. Be right back.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, the very first day in Israel, when we're staying in Jerusalem, we go to the Mount of Olives. And it's there at the Mount of Olives we look out over the old city of Jerusalem. It's a spectacular sight. You've seen it in pictures before, but it's another thing to actually be there as we walk down from the Mount of Olives to the Garden of Gethsemane, and we pray there. It's going to be a wonderful time with brothers and sisters from around the country visiting the Holy Land, the land of Jesus. If you want information on this March 14th through the 22nd tour, just call us and we'll send you a brochure. Call families, FAMILIES, option 5, and leave us your name and your address, and we'll mail you a brochure. Or if you want to simply go online at twholyland.com, everything's there. twholyland.com.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
No doubt when you were growing up, some adult admonished you to say what you mean and mean what you say. That advice should be spread far and wide when politicians, commentators, and others use words and phrases without any precision. When the New York Times hired Sarah Jeong, critics pointed to all of her tweets and verbal attacks on white people and law enforcement. J.J. McCullough, in a recent commentary, reminds us that one of the defenses of her horrible statements was that all of this was done satirically and hyperbolically. Well, using extreme language and hyperbole may get you hired at the New York Times, but it won't work in the real world. While taking a tour of the White House, say you wish you could kill the president. See how that works out for you. While you're in a police station, say that you wish all the cops would die. I doubt you'd get a linguistic pass for that statement. And the term fake news used to be applied to websites, like The Onion, that use satire to make a political point. Today, the term has been so overused that it's almost meaningless. For most people today, the term fake news is used to describe a story or a news organization they dislike. And while we're talking about hyperbole and fake news, we need to mention the president's tweets. Some of his defenders try to defend his indefensible comments by saying we shouldn't always take what he writes literally. No, we should take the words and actions of a president seriously. We also have heard the term deep state used indiscriminately. It used to mean a nefarious group of insiders in a foreign government. Today, it's often used to describe some federal bureaucrat you don't like and don't trust. These are just a few examples of why our elders told us to say what you mean and mean what you say. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hello. Welcome back to the show. It's great to be with you. It's great to be here on a Friday, and I have to say, it's time. It's time for another installment of our numerous updates and the continuing saga of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Democratic Socialist, young girl taking on the world. You know, she's on her way to Congress, and she's got so much to share with us as Americans. All of us old fuddy-duddies who believe in capitalism, all of us, you know, we're gripping our little checkbooks and our little savings passbooks, and we're just like wanting to keep all the money we've earned and maybe grow it into something for our kids or our grandkids. That's all poppycock. We shouldn't be doing that. What we should be doing is pooling our resources and putting our money into a big pile so Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez can tell us what to do with it. Never mind the fact that she has no life experience. She's not married. She doesn't have any kids. She hasn't worked for 10, 15, 20 years to build anything up. She hasn't saved anything. She hasn't started a business. She hasn't written the checks where she signs on the front. She's only signing checks on the back. She's never held a job for a long, long time and then watched as that job, the business went under because of idiotic policies and ideas put forward by people like herself. No, she's just young and fresh and hip, and she has cool ideas like the ones that are currently burning Venezuela to the ground. So what are we like? What's wrong with us? We should put our checkbooks and our Bibles and our guns and our savings passbooks and our little investment, statements. We should put all that down for a second, or maybe just set it on fire, and turn and subserviently submit ourselves to Alexandria, because she certainly knows better than we do. She's just so accomplished. Wow. So I hope you hear the sarcasm dripping from my voice, because that chick does not have anything she can tell me about anything. She hasn't worked. She hasn't lived. She hasn't done anything that would commend her to me as an expert, someone I should listen to and tell me what to do with myself. I mean, and I know there are people out there who say, well, I've never been married. it's not about everyone getting married, but I'm using that as one of the things that wisens people up. And if you're married and you know what I mean, there's nothing like being responsible for a whole nother person and understanding that all of your actions impact that person, and that you can destroy another person's life if you marry them and then you go down the wrong path. And so it grows you up. You begin to become more wise. And then throw a couple of kids into the mix. Throw one kid into the mix. All of a sudden now you're responsible for a person who, unlike your spouse, who could just, detach themselves and take care of themselves because they're an adult. Now you're responsible for a little person who honestly relies on you for everything. Every breath they take, every moment they have that's safe is your responsibility. Now throw in some work history and some savings, and maybe you've bought a home, maybe you've bought a car. Now you're in the investment market. Maybe you have a 401k. Now you're living. Now you've got a lot of skin in the game. Now decisions that you make are going to reverberate. They're either going to take you down a path that is, has some more prosperity in it, or it's going to take you down a path of destruction where your finances and everything you've got are just going down the tubes. And so Ocasio-Cortez says, I know you have a lot of skin in the game. I know you have a lot of things that you're up at night praying about. But what I think you should do is stop praying. Goodness gracious, you don't need that. What you need is some socialism. Now, I'm going to call it democratic socialism, just like you can call something, we could call it democratic cancer. Would you care if your doctor said, oh, don't worry, it's just democratic cancer. It's not like pancreatic cancer or breast cancer. It's democratic cancer. No, you'd say, but is it still cancer? Yeah, it's still a cancer. Well, then I'm worried. What are we doing? What kind of treatment can I get? She says, well, it's democratic socialism. So it's not like real socialism. Well, if it's socialism, it's socialism. Cancer is cancer is cancer. Socialism is socialism is socialism. And I remember a time when Democrats would say, yeah, we're for big government and we believe in good social policy and we believe in safety nets, but we are not touching socialism. I've met Democrats who told me, yeah, I could never get behind Bernie Sanders because I'm a Democrat, but I'm no socialist. Remember that? Now the Democrats are so desperate for votes, they'll take Ocasio-Cortez's word on things where she doesn't even know like regular Middle Eastern policy. I have teenagers running around this house who could school this college-educated woman on Middle Eastern policy. There's a reason that our ally in the Middle East is Israel and not the people who want a Palestinian state. There's a reason for that. So you got to love Fox Business and specifically Stuart Varney. He took this to task, this whole coffee shop closing and the minimum wage hikes and all of that. And I want to listen to him do it because you got to be informed about everything this chick is up to because she's going to be in Congress. I can't believe we taxpayers are going to be on the hook for funding her, but here it is.
This is a real life example of what happens, what damage can come to a company or a society when you've got $15 an hour minimum wage. There are going to be fewer jobs. And this is a classic example of that. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez goes back to the coffee shop in New York, where I believe she actually worked, where she had an entry-level job. She got back there to see her old friends and found that it's about to close. Why is it about to close? Because it's going to $15 an hour minimum wage. And the manager can't afford to run that business with that kind of pricing structure for his labor. So it's ironic, isn't it, that Ms. Ocasio-Cortez supports $15 an hour minimum wage, goes back to where she was started out in life in the workplace and finds it's closing because of the policies she supports. That's irony.
Wait a minute. That place I love is closing because of the way I think maybe it's not going to work out.
So, yeah, the place she loved, she claimed she loved, was subjected to the policies that she believes in, top-down bureaucratic control. The government telling you how much you have to pay your employees. The government doesn't come in and say, let me see your balance sheet. Let me see your profit margins. Let's decide if you have enough available profit to increase your employees' salaries. Let's decide which of the employees deserve the $15 an hour, because some of your employees, you probably have them on a track where you're going to increase their pay. And some of them, are on a track where if they don't make some changes, they're not going to be here much longer. But the government doesn't make any distinctions for that. They don't say increase the wages of your employees who are doing a great job. They just say, nope, anyone who's working here, the minimum they can make is $15 an hour, which means you're only going to hire people who are really worth $15 an hour. But you're going to hire fewer of them because you have to, because the government didn't say, here's an extra $100,000 a year to cover paying every employee $15 an hour. The government can't do that. It's already running in the red itself. The government can't even balance its own balance sheet. Federal, local, state governments, municipal governments, none of them have balance sheets that are in the black. Yet they're telling individual businesses, hey, you raise your employees' benefits. You raise their pay. You raise it to $15 an hour. An arbitrary number set by some pencil pusher who has never written a check to someone else for their work on the front. I'm telling you, start paying people for what they're doing for you. Get a couple of people in your employ, and you will suddenly begin to understand that it's not really 15 or how many kids you can support on what you're making. It's how much are you delivering to me during your working hours? When you start having to balance that, when you start saying, oh, okay, wow, I have this person working for me, and I have two people. One, I'm paying $8 an hour, and that person is worth literally maybe $30 an hour to me because that person gets not just that person's job done, but they work like 2.5 people. I'm digging and looking for a way to pay that person more money because I don't want to lose that person. And then you have employee B who came in at $12 an hour because they have these skills and they have all the things on their resume and they have this background. They had a fantastic interview and they're doing a job that is technically at a higher level and they need to be paid more. And that person works like 1/3 of an employee. They barely get their one job that they're given done. And then everything else is, well, I'll have to look into that. Well, I can't do that extra because I've got, I got family stuff. And there's nothing wrong with having family stuff. There's nothing wrong with having a family. It's fantastic. I encourage it. But the difference between those two employees is one is worth their weight in gold, and you're going to do anything you can to find some money to pay them more when you can. And the other person, you're trying to think of a way, look, I got to get them to either do the job I'm paying them for, or I need to let them go and find someone who can do it. Or maybe just give their duties to my 2.5 employee person and just give all their pay to them. This one person just do all of these tasks. And I've been to places, small businesses, where that's the case. They have some minimum wage employees who come in on shifts and do different things. And then they have one person, and you can always spot that person a mile away because every question goes to that person. That person knows everything. They've got the historical memory. They've got the institutional knowledge. They have the trust of the owner, and they usually have a lot more power than what their normal job description is. And they just get things done. They know how to delegate. They know which of the other employees is good for doing this job as opposed to that job. And that's the person who's worth a lot. But the government, in an Ocasio-Cortez situation, and really is the situation we're living under with minimum wages as it is, minimum wage in and of itself is a bad thing for our government to be setting as policy. Just read Thomas Sowell on the issue if you don't believe it. Don't take it from me. Take it from Thomas Sowell. He is the expert on minimum wage policy in this country and what it came out of. Unions wanting to keep black people from getting jobs. Oh, you get into some of that. People start, well, I don't know what you mean. No, I'm not calling unions racist. Not all unions are racist, but Davis-Bacon Act was not about making sure that people got paid $7.50 an hour. Davis-Bacon was about making sure that black employees couldn't compete with union workers. Yeah, look that up. So I have to say, when you start looking at it that way, and then you think about what Ocasio-Cortez wants to foist upon the American people, she wants a bunch of know-nothing Washington bureaucrats to be able to tell every person in America what they have to pay people who work for them. She wants bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. to be able to tell you how much food you can eat, how many straws you can buy, if any, how much coffee you can drink, how much soda you can drink. If you own your own home, how much of the money that you earn from your employer is yours and the rest of it gets confiscated and taken to the government because everyone needs a basic minimum wage, how everyone is entitled to a college degree, even people who don't want one, how taxpayers have to foot the bill for all that. And we're talking about $42 trillion worth of nonsense that Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders want to force on the American people. And when I say force, I do not mean they're saying, let's vote these things in. I mean, they're saying, let's give democratic socialism a try, which means you don't have your rights anymore. So if there was ever a time you thought, you know, I got to make an appointment for the midterms, that time is now. You need to be prayerfully considering who you're going to vote for, and then you need to go out and actually do it. Because people like Ocasio-Cortez, she doesn't actually have a viable political party, so she runs as a Democrat, and the Democrats are allowing this instead of kicking her out and saying, you know, there's a lot of things we want to try, but that ain't it. We can read the news. We know what's going on in Venezuela. They're eating the zoo animals and their own pets in Venezuela. Why would we want to try that? We're trying to improve America, not make it like that. They have so many people immigrating out of Venezuela that the surrounding countries are like, whoa, come on now. You can't be, all of y'all can't come over here. This is not other Venezuela. Y'all got to stay in your own place. And Maduro wants to clean out any opposition because notice he's still fat. He's living in a country where on average his countrymen have lost 29 pounds on average per person, and he's still fat like he was when everything was going well. So Ocasio-Cortez she's going in. She's running basically unopposed. This is not about defeating her, but it is about us. We have to understand what people want to do. We have to understand what people are running on. People are running on ideas that either work and have been proven to work or ideas that have not been proven to work. And that's what we have to be looking at. So we'll take calls, of course. We have Demetrius Minor up next. He's going to be with us from Americans for Prosperity, talking about stadium subsidies. That's going to be an interesting interview. We also have the call lines open at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. And we also have our website at urbanfamilytalk.com. I have to say, it's only been, not even a whole week that we are back from the Urban Family Talk Marriage and Family Conference, but that was such a great time. And it's going to be wonderful to see what we're able to do next year, this time, around this time next year, being able to do with the, second Urban Family Talk Family Conference. It's going to be fantastic. So apparently there's some Trump Democrats in Pennsylvania who support Trump and say that CNN's coverage of Cohen and Manafort is a sideshow. And you know that billionaire, Tom Steyer, he continues to attack Democrats for not pursuing impeachment as one of their campaign items. I think they're not pursuing it because it's a non-issue. No one wants to put the nation through impeachment, not regular people. Then you've got Texas Democrats calling for decriminalizing the border crossing. In other words, open borders. Democrats in Texas say crossing the border illegally should no longer be a criminal matter. The United States has built a system on incarcerating migrants. We really have to evaluate the way that we've criminalized migration. Like how Mexico has examined that, because Mexico still hasn't changed their law. If you're in the country, you are not allowed to be there illegally. You can't. If you're there illegally, you get arrested, even by a citizen, and they don't have the best, they're not taking care of you the way we take care of people in our prisons. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Demetrius Minor of Americans for Prosperity. Stay there. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Well, the Freedom from Religion Foundation is at it again. This time, the anti-liberty group is targeting a cafe offering a 10% discount to any patrons that show a church bulletin. Starters Cafe in Cheviot, Ohio is a growing brunch spot which the owner, Justin Watson, wants to capitalize on. Since the cafe's busiest day is Sunday, offering a church flyer discount has been very popular and is similar to restaurants offering savings to veterans, moms on Mother's Day, dads on Father's Day, senior citizens, and pretty much anyone celebrating a birthday. The Freedom from Religion Foundation likens this marketing genius to whites-only policies, calling it racist. Of course, the go-to for anyone wanting to infringe on the rights of others is to cry racism. Fortunately, Mr. Watson is standing his ground. Perhaps someone will start a foundation to advocate for our freedom from baseless attacks from the Freedom from Religion Foundation. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at stacyontheright.com.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist and creation researcher with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, when did the mammoths die?
Chris, the mammoths were thought to have died out about 10,000 years ago. And although evolutionists have admitted that early man must have seen the mammoths, more recent evidence has caused them much consternation. In the tomb of one of the pharaohs in Egypt is a drawing of men carrying ivory tusk on their shoulders. Next to them is an animal that sure looks like a mammoth, with hairy skin and a domed head, just like we see in mammoth fossils. And why not? Mammoths are a variety of the elephant kind, and two of them were on board Noah's Ark. Certainly humans knew of them, and from the earliest times have made use of their ivory. Chris, it's the back to Genesis view of history which makes sense out of the evidence.
To learn more about creation, get our free DVD called That's a Fact. Visit our web store at icr.org/store and use the promo code FACT at the checkout when ordering your That's a Fact DVD.
Securing America.
As the midterm elections approach, National Security Advisor John Bolton has a warning and an olive branch for Russia. After meeting with his Russian counterpart in Geneva, Bolton told reporters he brought up the issue of election meddling right off the bat.
Raised a number of times during these consultations, which lasted a little bit over 5 hours. But we weren't able to reach agreement on that.
A lack of consensus on meddling prevented the two leaders from issuing a joint statement, but Bolton said he was firm with the director of the Russian National Security Council.
I made it clear that we wouldn't tolerate meddling in 2018 and that we were prepared to take necessary steps to prevent it from happening.
Bolton told the AP there won't be any new sanctions against Russia if there's no further interference. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacey on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the show. Thanks for being here today. Happy Friday to you. Happy weekend. Before we even get started, I'm wishing you guys have a fantastic weekend. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome someone who is he's a frequent guest of the show, I guess you could say, when talking about issues for Americans for Prosperity in his new role as Coalitions Director for Florida for Americans for Prosperity. And so it's my pleasure to welcome Demetrius Minor to the program. Hi, Demetrius.
Well, hey, Stacey. How are you? Happy Friday.
I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
Doing great. I mean, it's raining here in the Sunshine State, but, you just learn to adapt to it and keep trucking and keep moving along.
It's raining here, too. So I tried to go out and do a walk this morning, and it was raining like the big drops where they all hit you in the face. And so I thought, well, this isn't going to work. So I came back inside. So let's talk about this stadium funding thing. Like, this is an interesting issue because I was previewing your spot here today on the show, and I was kind of referencing what happened here in St. Louis when we lost the Rams. It was really unfortunate because we did have a hardcore constituency of, St. Louisans who loved to attend Rams games. And they were season ticket holders. They had all the gear and stuff. And when Stan Kroenke kind of uprooted the team and left, even after we'd given him the tax breaks, tax rebates, and some promises of money to come in, he just up and moved the team anyway. So let's talk about these subsidies.
And Stacey, what you just mentioned is what we're facing here in Florida. And quite frankly, Florida, this isn't anything new. It's actually going around nationwide. So the Major League Baseball team, known as the Tampa Bay Rays, are seeking to relocate their baseball stadium, and it's currently held in the city that I live in, St. Petersburg. They're looking to relocate it to Ybor City, which is right outside of Tampa. And so what they're telling us is this is going to cost $890 million. Well, it's always higher. The cost is always higher than the original request. So let's just go ahead and round that up to $1 billion.
Wow.
They're looking for taxpayer money for $1 billion to relocate their stadium. Stadium is not even 20 years old, Stacey. So our problem is this. Look, if you want a new baseball field, that's fine. Don't expect taxpayers to pay for it. So one of the big arguments is, well, this is going to help contribute to the economic growth and economic development in that particular region. Well, that's also not true. If you look at a study that's done by, I think it's done by the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, it shows that when you build a new stadium, it does not contribute to sustained economic growth. What it does is it enriches team ownership. So they come to you and they say, okay, we built a new stadium in downtown Tampa, or like you said, downtown St. Louis. When people go to a baseball game, they're also going to go to the shops and the centers that surround where the stadium is. Well, I don't know if you've been to a baseball game recently, but these modern-day stadiums, they have indoor pools, they have restaurants, they have shopping centers, different plazas. So if you take your family to a baseball game and say you get hungry, right? Well, most people, they get a hamburger, they get nachos, they get a hot dog. They order food there within the stadium. You're not going to wait 2.5 hours after a baseball game, drive 30 or 40 minutes across town. Let's not even factor in the time you're going to have to wait for traffic to get out of the parking lot, and then wait another 30 to 40 minutes and spend money there when you can spend money right there in the stadium. So the return of investment is not beneficial to the taxpayers, and so that's what we're up against here in Florida.
So what is the solution here? Because the teams always say, look, it's not economically feasible for us to foot the entire bill for this stadium or this whatever. We need you to subsidize it, and this is a benefit to you, and you've just kind of eviscerated that. But what is the answer? Like, is it just them paying for their own stuff?
Well, several things. The team owners, if they really feel like there's much needed upgrades to these facilities, if they're the owner, Stacey, it shouldn't be nonsensical for us to ask them to pay for it, or they can go through private investors, or they can crowdsource. There's various ways for them to raise funding capital for these projects without asking the taxpayers to foot the bill. And I think the best long-term answer to this is to stop electing officials who support corporate welfare. It's not the government's role to pick winners and losers. Look at what just happened in Las Vegas. $750 million in stadium subsidies for the Oakland Raiders in California to relocate to Las Vegas, Nevada. $750 million. And what we're finding, I think this also happened in Minnesota. This also happened in Atlanta with the Atlanta Braves. What we're finding is the stadiums are not seeing their return on investment. So guess how they have to cover the fees? Guess how they have to pay the bill? They raise taxes. For example, in Atlanta, I am a huge Braves fan, but this is the...
let me interject. Listeners, when he says he's a huge Braves fan, I don't think you understand. So part of the year, his entire Twitter feed is dedicated to conversing about the Braves. And he's such a huge baseball fan that whenever he goes to a new city that he's never been to before, if they have a baseball team, he wants to go and visit their stadium so that he can compare it to the Atlanta Braves stadium and also put it on his list of stadiums that he's visited, because he believes all of the stadiums are like, there's something unto themselves. And so I can't wait until he comes to St. Louis. We're obviously going to have dinner with him as a family, and then we're going to have to take him to see the stadium for the Cardinals. So he's a huge fan, huge baseball guy.
Huge fan.
Yeah.
But I'm not a huge fan of what the Braves did. A couple of years ago, they had no public hearings on this, Stacey. They told the citizens of Cobb County, they said, okay, we're going to relocate our stadium here. You're going to pay for it. So they built this nice stadium, state-of-the-art, and because to make up for the money, to make up for the fees, do you know that they raised the bed tax, which is the
the hotel bed tax?
What's that?
The hotel bed tax.
And public libraries are closing. So we look at the direct hit that it's having on that local economy, because they decided to build a new stadium there on taxpayer dime. We're trying to prevent this from happening in Tampa, and it really just amazes me, the corrupt politicians who are in bed with big business, who don't tell the public anything, and they're trying to be very sneaky. They're trying to be very secretive in how they're doing this. This has happened nationwide, and Stacey is corporate welfare.
So let's get as serious as possible about this, because as someone who enjoys the stadiums yourself for baseball, you have a kind of a thing about wanting to see, the continuation of these sports entities. And I have this isn't one of those things where, since I'm not a football fan, I don't like stadium funding for them, but I'm fine with it for the hockey teams or the baseball teams. I don't believe any of the stadiums should be subsidized by us. I really don't. I do think that when you look at these multi-billion-dollar industries and the ticket sales and all of that, and you even mentioned crowdfunding, there are so many mechanisms by which you can build something huge and amazing, and especially when you're a really, really rich organization like the NFL, that it is almost an atrocity that they expect taxpayers to subsidize it. So what is the answer here?
The answer here is that the public has to get more involved. The answer here is that we have to hold politicians accountable, because they're not counting on citizens being educated on this subject. Listen, just like anywhere else, business, there's competition, and they're being lied to by these team owners. So team owners are telling folks, hey, listen, if you don't fund this new baseball stadium, okay, we're going to go across town. We're going to relocate to a different state where they will give us more bang for our buck. It's simply not true. They also give them this arbitrary deadline that they have to go by, because they make it look like it's a state of urgency. Listen, the baseball team is not going to be vacuumed up by a volcano if they don't get the money to relocate to a new state. Here, where I live, Stacey, on a minor league level, they're seeking $24 million to build a dormitory on a spring training facility, a dormitory, and they expect the funds to be there by December. Now, that's not going to happen. But, Stacey, what baseball stadium have you been to where you've seen living quarters, dormitory built on a stadium? It's ridiculous.
I've never seen
They've been taking advantage of county commissioners for years, and it needs to come to a stop.
So I understand that you're coalitions director for AFP, and you're trying to bring some knowledge to this. And we do have affiliates in Florida, so it's good to have this conversation. I'm just when do we as taxpayers say, you know what, enough is enough? Like, if you're the kind of person who's elected into municipal office or local government office that you want to keep pouring taxpayer dollars into these stadiums, we got to elect somebody else who knows how to balance a checkbook, somebody who's actually responsible. That's what we have to do.
So, Stacey, you're absolutely right. This is why local elections matter. I know there's a lot of talk right now about the House and the Senate, governor's races. That's important. But when you talk about funds, you talk about budget, look at what's on the commission level, the commissioners. Look at the mayor of those cities. Those are the people that determine the budgets for the city and where the money is going to be spent. And if we can get fiscal conservatives elected to state and local governments, things like taxpayer subsidies, corporate welfare, hopefully we'll see an end to this, because that's going to have the most direct impact on citizens such as you and I.
Well, I got to say, I agree. So we can't get off this call without finding out how the Braves did this year. I mean, obviously the season is still going, but yeah.
We're in first place by 3 games over the Phillies, and we're looking good. We've got players that are in the Rookie of the Year race and the MVP race. I think we've got 35 games left. Not that I'm paying attention or anything, but we play the Marlins tonight.
I knew you could
make my busy schedule. I still make time for business.
I was going to say, there's no way I ask him this question and he can't give a full breakdown. You could honestly be a sportscaster in your spare time for baseball if you wanted. You could.
Hey, I might have to pursue that.
Hey, it's not a bad gig from what I can tell. Makes lots of money, and all they have to do is just talk about, because have you noticed that baseball hasn't been corrupted by this push to talk politics? ESPN still talks a lot of politics, but when you listen to the baseball guys, they don't seem like they're into politics. They're just only into baseball, which means their games are still well attended, and they don't have the problems the NFL has.
That's very true. I've never noticed that. But when I listen to Braves game or baseball for that matter, the commentary is usually about the game, unless there's some big cultural event that's happened in that particular city. There may be a reference to it, but for the most part, they stick to the game, for which I appreciate.
Yeah, I'm sure all the fans appreciate that, and the NFL could do well to take a page from that. And I know that there's this big push for people, with the protests. There's something that these players want done. But they've been off all summer, and they haven't said diddly about anything. And now that they're going back to work, they're starting to protest again. And you kind of think to yourself, well, what were you doing all summer? Couldn't you have staged some protests over the summer? Like, why do you have to do it during the games when people who may not agree with you are watching, and it's ruining their ratings? And I think one of the things that I'd love you to weigh in on as we're going out here, will this anthem thing even be an issue for the NFL if they lose all of their viewers?
Well, I'll tell you what, Stacey. 2 things. I do believe in freedom of speech, and I also believe in free market and capitalism. And so, by the way the free markets have responded to what players are doing, what the ownership is allowing them to do or not to do, shows us that the conversation and the narrative is changing with the NFL. And so owners are trying to respond to the market.
We're running out of time, Dean. We'll have to talk about this next time. God bless you. Thanks for coming on. And God bless all of you. Talk to you on Monday, Lord willing. Get in the pew on Sunday. Have a great weekend.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family Association.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
The sexual revolution is falsely promised